Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, the Dodgers won a nail-biter to sweep the Diamondbacks. Really big game for a lot of people. Bobby Miller, Caleb Ferguson, Evan Phillips, David Peralta, Dave Roberts. So much to talk about from this game. And let's just jump right into it. Let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Or even better, go ahead and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. Then you will never miss a day. You can be everydayers just like we are. If this is your first time with us, I am Jeff Snider. My normal co-host is Vince Samperio. It's just me today. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like you are. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And as I mentioned, Vince and I have both covered the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room at times. Vince was doing that these last couple games in Arizona. He was in Arizona for work. As you may or may not know, his day job is with Bleacher Report, and he helps do Mookie's podcast. And so he was in Arizona because Mookie did podcast episodes with Corbin Carroll and Zach Gallen, I believe it was. And so Vince checked out the games too. Dodgers won both of them. Dodgers are now 14-1 this year at games that Vince has attended. The only game that Vince was at that the Dodgers lost, that was because I was there with my sons, and my sons are more bad luck than Vince's good luck, so you can blame them. But anyway, that's why it's just me today, because Vince is, as I'm recording this at 10 p.m. Pacific time, Vince is in a car driving back to LA. And so, yeah, it's just me. But it's a fun game tonight. Dodgers beat the DBacks 2-0. And Bobby Miller. Let's start with Bobby Miller. I have this little graphic here on the YouTube thing on the side. I don't know what order to go in because there's so much stuff to talk about. There's not like three clean segments here. So we're going to talk, and then we'll take a break for an ad, and then we'll keep talking, and then we'll take another break, and then we'll keep talking, and then we'll end it. And so Bobby Miller, I think, is the first one to talk about. He went 6+, was through 6 innings on just 85-ish pitches. And so Roberts let him go back out for the 7th. Alek Thomas hit a leadoff single. And then Miller, you had Herrera, the catcher, up to bat, trying to get himself out, trying to sacrifice bunt. And Miller couldn't throw a strike, and he walked Herrera. So it was first and second, nobody out. And that's when Dave Roberts had seen enough. At this point, it was a 0-0 game. And Miller was upset with himself, very frustrated that he wasn't able to. He wanted to go 7. He appreciated Dave Roberts letting him go back out there for the 7th, and he wanted to finish that off. Instead, he put Caleb Ferguson in a tough situation. First and second, nobody out. Ferguson made the best of it immediately. And you remember, this is Caleb Ferguson, who Saturday night stunk up the joint, gave up 4 runs. They were all unearned because of his own error. He picked off Manny Machado to end the inning, but instead of getting him out, he threw the ball over Freddie Freeman's head. It was an ugly inning from Ferguson. And Robert said, get back out there, get back on that horse and get it done. And the first batter, Geraldo Perdomo, I can't remember. Anyway, Perdomo of the Diamondbacks, he's an all-star. I should learn his first name. Maybe someday I will. He tried to bunt to make it second and third with 1 out. He bunted the ball in the air, but it looked like he was still going to be a successful sac bunt, until Caleb Ferguson came flying out of nowhere and made a diving catch. Thomas from second and Herrera from first had both taken off thinking the bunt was going to drop. And so Ferguson easily doubled off Thomas at second. Ferguson took his time to make sure he made it. He double clutched a little bit, made sure he had a good grip, and made sure he made a good strong throw to Rojas at second base to get the double play. If he had been able to hurry that a little bit, they may have had a chance at a triple play. Because Herrera was pretty far off first base too, but they settled for a double play and then got out of it with it on the next batter, and just huge swing. It reminded me a lot of Game 7 of the 2020 NLCS. You remember that game when the Braves, I'm trying to remember all the details, but the Braves, they were going to score, and they were going to, the only question was how much, if the Dodgers could get an out or two before they got to Ronald Acuna. But the worst case scenario, I think it was second, third, nobody out. And the worst case scenario was Acuna coming up with 2 outs. But instead, Acuna never got up that inning because the Dodgers got that crazy double play where Justin Turner did the Superman tag on Dansby Swanson, then turned around and threw it to Seager covering third, who tagged out Austin Riley. And it was just such a huge swing. And then immediately Kike Hernandez then hit a home run to tie the game up. And then Cody Bellinger later hit the home run to take the lead. And what looked like was going to be the Braves taking control of that game, the Dodgers got out of it unscathed and ended up winning the game and the series and eventually the World Series. This one, obviously, the implications of this game weren't quite as high, but that, as far as the results of this game goes, that felt like that kind of swing where first and second, nobody out, with the heart of the DBacks order coming up. It was 9-hitter coming up and then the top of the order. So if Perdomo gets that bunt down at second, third, 1 out for the top of the order, like, you don't expect that game to stay scoreless. But instead, Ferguson makes that great play, and it just totally changed the complexion of that inning. And I believe the complexion of the game. I think that was the D-backs' best chance to score, and they didn't get it done because of Ferguson. It was huge. So Bobby Miller was huge. Caleb Ferguson was huge. Guess we'll stick with the pitching, finish this segment off with the rest of the pitching. Joe Kelly came in for the 8th inning and looked terrible to Ketel Marte. He walked him, looked like he was afraid to throw him a fastball, and he couldn't land the breaking ball. It was a terrible at-bat for Joe Kelly. And he walked him, and then he just dominated. He struck out Gurriel. Gurriel never had a chance. It was 100-mile-an-hour fastball right down the middle, like upper part of the zone, but not even a high fastball, just, and he just overpowered him. And then Christian Walker, after the umpire blew a call, first pitch to Christian Walker should have been called a strike. It was called a ball. Dave Roberts got a little fiery. I think Will Smith said something to the umpire. Roberts came out of the dugout to make sure he was protecting Smith, make sure if somebody got tossed, it was Roberts and not Smith. Nobody got tossed, but they got their point across. Kelly ends up striking out Walker, dominates him with the slider, and then gets a pop-up or a ground out from Tommy Pham to end the inning. The most dominant I've seen a pitcher look after looking so scared the first batter. And then Evan Phillips got right back on the horse after I mentioned on yesterday's show. Phillips had allowed runs in back-to-back outings. He did not this time. He got a 1-2-3 inning, helped by a great play. Alec Thomas hit a hard ground ball to shortstop that Rojas knocked down on a short hop and picked it up and fired to first. And Freddie did the splits to stretch, and they got Thomas by less than half a step. Thomas is very fast, left-handed. I didn't think they had a chance. After Rojas didn't catch the ball cleanly, was only able to knock it down instead of fielding it, I didn't think they had a chance, but Rojas made a strong throw, and Freddie made a great stretch. Just awesome. And Dodgers ended up winning uneventful 9th inning after that, and the Dodgers win the game. They sweep the series to knock the D-backs now under 500 and 11 games back. We'll talk more about the standings a little bit later in this episode. The pitching was awesome, and it's what they needed. It was the Dodgers, I think, their 12th shutout of the season, something like that. For as bad as the pitching has been this year, the high ERA, they have the second most shutouts in baseball, and that's pretty remarkable. And I'm going to come back in a minute, and we're going to talk about how the Dodgers scored, because there's so much to talk about there, about David Peralta, about Dave Roberts, and a bunch of other stuff. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. It always is, though. And Game Time is the way to fix that. Whether you want tickets for sports, music, comedy, theater, whatever it is, you can get killer deals on last-minute tickets and Game Time's best price guarantee, so you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you will have. Forget about planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. The term to apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right. I am back. I want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. I want to remind you, every Dodger game, if you can't catch it on TV or live at the stadium, you can catch it on the radio on SiriusXM or the SXM app. Just launch the SXM app and search for Dodgers. You can also listen to this podcast on the SXM app by searching for Locked On Dodgers. I want to thank all of you everydayers for being with us every weekday morning. We love doing the show. We love that you're here. If you're not an everydayer, super easy to become one. Just watch or listen every morning. And finally, if you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love to hear from you in the YouTube comment section. If you are listening on the podcast, we'd love to hear from you through social media or email or whatever. I will give you all that contact info at the end, like we always do. Let's talk about the game, when the game really happened. 2-0 game, both runs scored on one single play, and that came in the top of the 8th inning. The Dodgers, the DBacks they went to a left-handed pitcher to face Freddie Freeman, and not a bad idea, I guess, except that Freddie Freeman's really good against left-handed pitching. And so with 2 outs and nobody on, so Rojas grounded out and Mookie Betts struck out on a bad call by the umpire. That was a theme. We're not going to talk about it because the Dodgers won, and I only have one more left because I promised you guys only 2 episodes this season focusing on the umpires sucking. And I'm not going to waste it on a game the Dodgers won, but it was bad. Anyway, 2 outs, nobody on, and the D-backs pull Kevin Ginkel. He had already gotten maybe 5 outs because he had to come in when Merrill Kelly got hurt in the 6th inning. So Ginkel had pitched quite a bit. I'm looking to see how many pitches he had thrown, except there it is. Thrown 22 pitches. So they take him out to bring in the lefty, Kyle Nelson, to face Freddie Freeman. Freeman rips the ball, thought it was going to be a home run. It bounced on the warning track, bounced over the wall into the pool. So Freddie gets his 42nd double of the season. Last year, I saw a note. Last year, I think it was Vince actually who tweeted this out, that last year Freddie led the majors with 47 doubles. He already has 42 doubles, and there's almost 2 months left in the season. Pretty remarkable season Freddie's having. After that, they intentionally walked Will Smith to get to Max Muncy, who in the past has been very good against lefties. This year, he's struggled. He's struggled against everybody, but even more against lefties. And Muncy, great at bat, worked a walk to load the bases. And at that point, it's David Peralta coming up, lefty on the mound. The Dodgers had both Kike Hernandez and Ahmed Rosario on the bench, both of whom they traded for just to face lefties. And Dave Roberts chose to let David Peralta hit. And Peralta rewarded that confidence with a 2-run single to right field. Just a huge hit. And now what I want to talk about, I'm going to get to Peralta in a minute, but I want to talk about Dave Roberts here because Jerry Hairston, I love Jerry Hairston Jr. I think he's great. I think he is very good at his job, which is, being a guy who talks about sports, talks about baseball. There's a reason that Jerry is not a manager. And I mean, there's a few reasons probably, but one of the big reasons is because he does not believe in analytics. And so he was so excited to take this opportunity to talk about, Kirsten talked to Peralta after the game, and he talked about how much it meant to him for Dave Roberts to show him confidence in that situation and let him bat against a lefty with the bases loaded. Peralta had hit into a double play with the bases loaded and 1 out earlier in the game. And so give him a chance to redeem himself, let him come through. And that you could tell that meant a lot to Peralta, that Roberts showed that confidence in him. And Hairston used that to talk about how, analytics can't replace a feel for the game, blah, 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 blah. And now I don't disagree with that point. I believe, I really, really believe that you have to have a balance. that you have to have a feel for the game and recognize that, well, sometimes the numbers might suggest this, but because I know, a manager knows so much more about his team than a spreadsheet does at any given moment. And so there are definitely times when a manager should go against the numbers and go with his gut. Not very often, though. And the best part was this was not a case of Roberts going against the numbers. So after Jerry Harrison gets done talking about, how great it was that Roberts went with his gut, that's a baseball call, the analytics can't do that, blah, 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 blah. Then they go to the locker room interview with Dave Roberts, and Roberts talks about all the analytics reasons why he made that decision. Nelson, because of the intentional walk to Will Smith, had already faced his 3 hitters, Freeman, Smith, and Muncy, which meant that Nelson could be taken out of the game. The DBacks had, what's that guy's name? I can't remember his name right now, but Dave Roberts knew his name, Miguel Castro. Very, very good stuff. Tough righty warming up in the bullpen. So Roberts knew that if he sent Kike up to the plate, the DBacks would bring in Miguel Castro. So the decision that Roberts was making wasn't David Peralta or Kike Hernandez to face Kyle Nelson. It was David Peralta against Kyle Nelson or Kike Hernandez against Miguel Castro. And on both counts, that is in favor of going with Peralta because Peralta is a better hitter than Kike Hernandez this season. Peralta was already in the game. And so he was, hitting is harder than regular hitting. So he has that going for him. And Miguel Castro is a better pitcher than Kyle Nelson. And so everything about this analytically and said, stick with Peralta. And Roberts knew all that stuff. He recited that stuff to Kirsten Watson in the media after the game. And he even went so far as to talk about Nelson's repertoire and how Nelson doesn't have a wipeout slider, which might have made him give him pause against Peralta. But, basically he knew Nelson's stuff and whether Peralta was likely to get a hit. Dave Roberts knew that Peralta against Nelson had a better chance of success than Kike against Castro. Not because of his gut, not because he's a baseball man, but because he's aware of the situation and knows the numbers and knows what's going on. It was a perfect example of why I believe, people who criticize Dave Roberts will often say, he's great in the clubhouse, but he terrible on-field manager. He's not a terrible on-field manager. He's made mistakes for sure. And I'm not going to harp on the whole 60-40 thing again. Quick summary, if you're new to the show, I don't believe there are very many right or wrong managerial decisions. I believe it's mostly 60-40, even 50-50 calls that we think about. And the manager's goal, his job is to go with the 60% chance of success more often than the 40% chance. And I think Dave Roberts is very, very good at that almost all the time. Even when people criticize him, there's always a case to be made for what he did. And people it's just people default to criticizing Dave Roberts. And yet and even when they try to give him credit in a situation like this, they have to couch it with, it's because he didn't go with the analytics. He went with his gut. No, this was an analytics move because Dave Roberts is a very smart dude. He understands baseball. And a lot of that understanding is from playing for 10 years and coaching for another 15 years. And a lot of it is because he understands analytics. And that's why he is one of the best managers in baseball right now. And the fact that he was able to make an analytical move and make David Peralta feel warm and fuzzy in his heart, that is the perfect demonstration of the combination of smarts and people person skills that Dave Roberts brings to the job. Nobody could do that better. He didn't say, hey, Peralta, I like your chances against Nelson because Castro against Kike is not a good matchup. He said, yeah, I believe in you. Go get him. Go get him. And Peralta believed in himself. At one point I did like that Hairston made was that we forget sometimes that these players are regular people and you need your coach to believe in you. If you feel like your coach believes in you, you're going to believe in yourself a little bit better. And so it was huge all the way around. And for David Peralta to get that hit, David Peralta had 2 huge nights in his old home. He robbed the home run the other night And then tonight he gets the hit that drives in the only 2 runs of the game. Got to do the post-game interview with Kirsten twice in a row. It's a mighty good-looking post-game interview on both sides of the mic. And just great series for Peralta. I love David Peralta. I mentioned this on Twitter. I don't remember if I mentioned it here, but David Peralta is in like Juan Uribe territory for me as far as somebody I hated before he was a Dodger and how much I love him now. Like Juan Uribe was my least favorite player in baseball before the Dodgers got him. And then I learned to love him. Peralta wasn't quite at least favorite status, but I could not stand him. And now I like Peralta already more than I ever liked Uribe. And I liked Uribe quite a bit. David Peralta is awesome. I love the dude. And we need to get those freight train whistles I talked about a few months ago, get those going at Dodger Stadium. Dodgers, do a freight train giveaway. Freight train whistle. They're like $4 on Amazon. Come on, Dodgers. Maybe I'll email somebody. All right, I'm going to come back in a minute. We're going to talk about the standings a little bit and just what things are looking like the rest of the season. So thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. And please keep it Locked On Dodgers. All right, I am back. I want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. I want to remind you again, you can catch every Dodger game on the radio broadcast on SiriusXM or the SXM app. Just launch the SXM app and search for Locked On Dodgers. And so looking at the standings, every other team in the National League West lost tonight. So the Rockies lost on a walk-off error against the Brewers. Runner on third, 2 outs in the bottom of the 10th, tie game. Routine ground ball to shortstop, and the shortstop just throws the ball in the dirt. First baseman can't dig it. Game over. Rockies are now 22.5 games behind the Dodgers. Going from worst to best, we then get to the Padres, who lost again to the Mariners. Padres are now 5 games under 500. They're 55-60. They're 13 games behind the Dodgers. Doing some quick math, so the Padres have played 115 games. Dodgers have played 113. So the Dodgers have 49 games left. So if the Dodgers were to go 25-24 in those 49 games, that would put the Dodgers at 92 wins and 70 losses on the season. To get to 92 wins, the Padres would have to go 37 and 12. No, 37 and 10 to catch the Dodgers. Well, here's the deal. Power outage at my house in the middle of that sentence. So I'm now recording the rest of this on my phone. And that means I also don't have the standings up in front of me anymore. I was going to do the math like I was doing on the Padres. You know, I got the point across about the Padres, right? Otherwise, we've got the Padres are 13 games back. The Giants or the DBacks are now 11 games back, and the Giants are 6 games back. Dodgers haven't clinched this division by any means, but they are definitely in the driver's seat. They are looking really, really good, and especially with how well they're playing and how poorly everybody else is playing. Nothing's set in stone, but this 4-game series against the Rockies coming up this weekend for the Dodgers is a great opportunity for them to put even more distance between themselves and the other teams in the National League West, or at least maintain it. You know, obviously the Dodgers can only control their games. They can't control what the other teams do, but it's an easy way to knock 4 games off the schedule. And if 4 games from now, even if they still just lead by 6, 11, and 13, you know what? That's a win because that's 4 fewer games. And those numbers I was just talking about for the Padres, how they'd have to get back in it, even harder at that point, and do the same math for the Giants and the D-backs. And the odds are not in their favor. The odds are definitely in the Dodgers' favor because, as we talked about at the beginning of the season, everybody poo-pooed the Dodgers offseason, talked about them not making the big moves and all of that. Well, guess what? They are still an excellent, excellent baseball team. And when you're an excellent baseball team, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to play excellent baseball. So that's going to do it for me for today. Sorry for this technical difficulties here at the end, but I hope you enjoyed this episode. I got to get my rants in on the good camera before I had to switch to my phone. Thank you guys again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. I want to remind you that you can check every Dodger game on the radio on SiriusXM or the SXM app. Just launch the SXM app and search for Locked On Dodgers. You can also listen to this show on the SXM app by searching for Locked On Dodgers. What else? You can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSince91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog, and the DMs are open in all of those places. Although, as I mentioned yesterday, you're probably better off DMing Vince or me or both directly instead of the Locked On Dodgers account, just because we don't check that one as often. You can email us at lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or you can send us a voicemail or a text message at 323-863-LOCK 5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.